time to fuel your business success. Welcome to Harmonious at Lunch. We're bringing you bite-sized advice and expert conversations to drive clarity and growth 5 days a week. Make sure you join our Facebook group at humanop.com/lunch, where listeners like you and our guests hang out so we can find harmony in business together. If you're building a business, you're in the right place. Let's dive in.
How do you make sure you're focused on the correct kind of value creation in your business? And are you focused on that as the CEO? We're going to talk about that today with a very special guest, Lee Benson. Welcome to the show, and thank you for being here.
Brandon, it's good to be here. And by the way, I love the upbeat intro music. I'm actually calling from my home music recording studio. So nice job on that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I see you have a bunch of you have guitars behind you, a bunch of other music equipment. So that means a lot coming from you. I appreciate that compliment. Thank you.
Yeah, nice job.
So we're talking value creation, and I have to say, I want to get your take on this. This might be one of the most overused catchphrases in business, and I really can't stand people saying it anymore. But I know you have a different take on it. How do you hear when other people say value creation? Like, what bugs you about it, and what's the angle you're coming at it from?
Well, there's a big difference to me between saying adding value and creating value. And so I always start with, if I'm looking at an organization, and as we talked about before we got started, I've started 8 companies from scratch. I've sold 3, one for well into 9 figures, one for 8 figures, one for 7 figures. I'm still in the game today, leading 2 companies as CEO. So I love the game from startup all the way to scale. My biggest company, I had over 500 employees. We were doing business in 60 countries, thousands of customers, doing repair and overhaul in the aviation business. Very complicated business, loved it. So all the way through, I thought about this a long time ago. What is the job of the CEO? Well, it's to continually and responsibly increase the value of their business. That's it. And when I ask that question, I rarely get, especially startup to middle market companies, a solid answer. But it makes sense and they jump right on it. So then by proxy, the rest of the leadership team, especially the senior leadership team, their job is to collectively increase the value of the business responsibly over time. So when I'm talking about value, that's it. From a material standpoint, it's probably based on some multiple of profit, EBITDA, whatever. Could be cash flow. There's a number of things depending on the type of business, but generally profit, you get a 5x, 10x, whatever. When I sold my largest aerospace business, I was able to get a 21.6x multiple because I focused on creating value holistically. So there's material value, and EBITDA was our most important number. We're looking for a multiple when it came time to sell. And I wasn't even looking to sell. That's a whole other story if you want to talk about that. But then there's emotional energy value, which is the X factor for leaders. We as leaders essentially create the environment from which all the team members create value. That's it. And how we show up and all of that, huge emotional energy opportunity there. And I actually think positive emotional energy is the scarcest commodity on the planet. Most say time. I'd rather live only half as long on 9 or 10 on a scale from 1 to 10 than twice as long on 1 or 2. Just life is so much more fulfilling. And then the third part, I call it spiritual value creation of these 3 different, big buckets you can create value in. And at its core, it's all about connectedness. So I would have and still have all kinds of programs to really strengthen the relationships between team members. So when I think about creating value, I'm thinking about doing it in the right balance. Every company is going to be a little bit different. Every family is going to be different, every individual. But if we're creating value materially, emotionally, and spiritually, and spiritual doesn't mean that you're deeply religious. Absolutely can be, don't have to be. Being connected to a community that has your back, that's strong, that has sort of a value creation, culture within it is important to everyone, I believe. So when I think about value creation, that's where I go. And every one of those categories can be objectively measured. Now, how does that land on you compared to the overuse of it that you were talking about?
Thank you is what I'll say. Finally, because I love the 3 categories. I've never heard it put like that. The material side is really where people stop with value creation because, it's simple, right? You want to increase the value of your business. You produce more revenue than you do expenses. and you keep doing that until the gap is as wide as possible, and then you sell the business. The other two side, the spiritual and the emotional side, I'm really curious about that. Let's start with the emotional. You said that's the X factor, I think were your words. How do you create that as a leader, especially with 500 employees? It's really hard to even know all those people individually. What was your focus, particularly for that bucket of value creation?
Yeah, it was central to leadership development. So whatever leadership traits you come up with, another way to think about it is, what are the leadership behaviors or traits that cause the most value to be created because of the environment that it creates? And positive emotional energy is a big part of that. As a leader, the CEO for sure should be really good at and passionate about talking about what's possible, where we're going, and making sure we're all engaging in productive conversations and actions to move in that direction and get everybody to actually own it. Because again, we're creating the environment from which they create value. We can't come in and stump speech our way into motivation every day. We want them to own it. We want every single team member acting like the CEO of their own role. So a couple of traits you could say, hey, our leaders have positive energy in good times and especially bad times. If everything was perfect, we wouldn't need a leader. So when things go sideways, why do leaders get frustrated and act like victims? No, this is when you need to step it up and go for it. And then energize could be another trait where we want to create an environment that releases positive, productive energy from all of the team members. Another one could be passion. And that's being passionate about being a leader and what that means to create more and more value with and through others, which is, to me, the definition of leadership. Passionate about your industry, passionate about your function within the organization. So that's what I'm talking about there. And you can actually measure it. And I love getting examples from leaders of how they're applying each of those things to objectively, measurably increase the value of the business, customer experience, internal or external, as well as cash flow and profitability. So that's what I'm talking about when it comes to emotional energy. What does it feel like to be inside the organization? And something I'll say about driving positive emotional energy, not just for the sake of everybody jumping up and down and being positive. It's got to be the right approach to it. But the reason we focus on that, the positive emotional energy and the spiritual or connectedness side of it, it's all about productive engagement. And engagement to me is one of those incredibly overused words too, like you were talking about, adding value and all of that. I always ask the question, engage with what? And how do you know? So they'll have a survey, are you engaged? Yes or no? It's like, really? I don't even know what that means. Engaged with what? And so when I'm looking at productive engagement, every single role in our organizations should be designed to create a certain amount of value. We're investing in this role. We're paying, so many dollars a year in salary, so many dollars an hour, whatever it is. And with that role and its design, there should be a clear set of 2, no more than 4 measurable outcomes that we're going to measure the value that they agreed to create and be clear on it. And a lot of organizations, I say most don't do that very well, but we should do that well. We're hiring you, we're investing this, we want to get this return. Here's how we're going to measure it. Oh, and by the way, you've agreed to do this. If it falls below this line, it won't work. Are you good with that? Oh yeah, for sure. And that way, when it doesn't work out, it's a better conversation going forward. So for productive engagement, every single role is meeting or beating the outcomes they agreed to meet or beat when they come into it. So that's why this is so important, Brandon.
I completely agree with you. I'm curious about the behaviors. Where is that explained? Is that in the job description? Is it in the interview? And then also, once they're inside the company, how do you reinforce those behaviors? And how do you offer positive reinforcement, so you catch people in the act of these good behaviors and help them model towards it? That's the only way I've seen really successful companies do it, is that continuous focus on positive behaviors, rewarding, promoting, bonusing, whatever it may be, not on metrics and profit, but really on the outward behaviors that they exhibit. I'm curious how that went for you and all of your companies.
Yeah. I believe our goal is to create a culture that's connected to creating value. So we want to connect culture to value creation. So all the behaviors, everything that we're doing should be in alignment with that. And when I design alignment tools for my businesses or all the companies that I've worked with and continue to work with over the years, and it's been hundreds, there's always a clear purpose for each alignment tool. And what I mean by that is a mission statement's an alignment tool. Like, what could a purpose for a mission statement be? And I like, it should tell customers in a compelling way why they do business with us, because if we don't do this every day well, they leave. And it's job security for us, and it's why we get a paycheck. That's a mission. Now, you can have a overarching vision and purpose for the organization that kind of sets the direction and all that. Same thing. Why do we have that? And then when you get down to behaviors, I like surveying all the employees. And when I first did it, it was back probably 97, 98, had about 70 employees in my aerospace company. And I asked the employees to help with our cultural alignment tools on behaviors, because before that, we had a set of values that was really making no difference, and a lot of different interpretations of what it meant to even apply it. It was just wallpaper inside the organization. And I said, well, what we really want to accomplish is to create the conditions where at any point in time, 50% or more of our team members are performing, behaving, and leading as good or better than the top 10% at our strongest, most admired competitors. So if we can do that, nobody will ever be able to beat us. And I need your help. Please write down and hand in the best behaviors, the winningest behaviors of the most successful people you've worked with on their best days. And we got this huge list that came in that just, and by the way, of 70 employees surveyed, 68 participated. It was so cool.
Wow.
And we got this huge list that came in, and it distilled down to 6. And it was a few examples. High performing team members at Able Engineering at the time, when I sold it, it was Able Aerospace. Do what they say they will. That's the observable part of integrity. They treat company resources as their own. They present and pursue permanent solutions as opposed to dwelling on problems. They're fully engaged and participate within the team. They're respectful, honest, and straightforward. And we had a set of leadership traits. We had a quality policy, a mission, and a vision. And every 6 months, the employees would write down one example of where they applied each of those things to measurably improve the organization. So I'll remember all of those alignment tools until I'm not here anymore, because we operationalized it. So when you say looking for ways to catch people doing this and making it positive, I don't think about it that way. I think about, we want to operationalize it. When a new employee comes on board, hey, our culture is all about creating value. Every role is clearly designed. Here are our alignment tools. We want to make sure that you're okay living this, because anybody that gets through the filters that doesn't live this, they can't work here anymore. And an example of that is, if you're always looking for solutions, you're not dwelling on problems. If somebody comes in and says, look, I just want to do this particular job, and in that aerospace business, I did have a couple over the years. So this is out of thousands of employees probably in total. A couple said, I just want to turn a wrench. I don't want to have to engage in improving anything. And then I help them find another job. That's okay. This is part of your job description. So it's operationalizing it everywhere, from the interview process, the onboarding process, the team member development process, the leadership development process. You're not going over it just to check a box in a meeting. You appropriately use those tools to create more and more value as an organization. And this goes into kind of the camp of, well, we want people to feel this way or feel that way. It's like, I can't control how they feel, but I can create an environment where they're fully supportive. I want an environment with all the team members where we're together on this developmental journey. We're doing our jobs. I'm doing my job as CEO. You're doing your job. We're working together. You are fully supported. We're developing you. This isn't like a lot of companies where everything's just 100% transactional. We're paying you this, you do this, don't think, just shut up and do it. That's not what any leader says, but unfortunately, in a lot of environments, that's actually what's happening. So I want to create an environment where everybody's supported, get it to a place where every team member loves coming to work. This is so great. And they act like the CEO of their own role. And I have lots of examples of what that looks like.
Yeah, I love that, because while you're correct that it's not what people say, actions speak louder than words. And you said it, like, that's how most people act, is they treat things as a transaction. They hire people to do a job, and they expect the job to get done, and they don't reinforce building the human being and making them better, helping them develop their career. This company might be a pit stop it might be somebody's career. I believe that you should build them all the same way. You should invest in your people because they're investing in you and your company. I love the examples you gave. I'm curious about after you left, after you sold the company. I don't know how long you were involved after the fact, if you're still involved, but transitions are one of the most difficult parts of business because as the leader moves on, new leadership comes in, they impart typically their values on the organization, or sometimes they do it just to shake things up and show leadership, which is crazy to me. Why break something that's not broken? How did that look for your companies? You had these high level cultures, high performing individuals, and you really poured into them. Was that carried through after the transition? And what happened to the companies after you left? Please don't break any NDAs though.
Well, I wouldn't. That's why I'll never share exact numbers because that's confidential in terms of the transaction. But it's more complicated than, hey, they come in and change it just for the sake of changing it. The company that bought us, Textron, they were fantastic through the whole process. So much respect I have for that company and their integrity. They have 40,000 employees, and there are a few managers that had said, hey, what you're doing is literally 100 times better than what we're doing, but it's going to be way easier to change this company to what 40,000 are doing than the other way around. 100% agree with that. Oh, and by the way, they're a successful company. They're doing a lot of things right. No question. Now, it was important to me, and I sold the company in January of 2016. It was a 23-year run from scratch to there when I sold it. I chose to stay on for 17 months to make sure the transition went well because the 500 employees that were all part of this thing that got us there, I wanted to make sure they had a job and it continued because there are lots of examples where large companies buy small, mid-sized companies. We're probably solid middle size company and they destroy it. And off the top of the acquisition, I took millions of dollars that came out of my pocket and some of the other shareholders' pockets, and set it aside as a retention bonus for, I think it was around 23 leaders that if they stay for 2 years, they get it, to make sure the transition went well. Even before selling the company, because of the culture, I would do, I guess you could call it a town hall, but it would be one day dedicated to every single meeting with every team member by function. Sometimes we combine functions, and we had a conference room we could fit up to 300 people in it. And I would go through, here's what's going on with the company for maybe 20 minutes, and then they would share the best work they're doing to create more value for the business. Well, 6-7 months before we actually sold, I said, we're thinking about this. What do you think? And 20% of the team members said, no way, we don't want to do it. And I kept going through, well, eventually it's going to change hands, and what would make this worthwhile and where does it go? By the end, there was only 2 or 3 people that didn't want to do it, and we agreed to sell. And by the way, keeping the company would have been an equally good, if not even better option for me. So I had the best of both worlds in front of me. So as I thought about that transition, it wasn't, here I am, how much money can I make? And it's all about me, and it's only the material value creation piece. No, we've got these other 2 buckets, emotional energy, connectedness, spiritual value creation. They were all part of getting us here. What's going to ensure the transition? So fast forward to today, this coming January is 10 years. They're still there. They have an amazing global reputation. I stay in touch with, I would say, well over 50, loosely in touch with close to 100 in total employees. And a number of them went off to, take big jobs in other companies, which is fantastic. A number of them are still there. They're doing great work. I follow them. This is this holistic value creation approach. And interestingly, at the time I sold it, if you had a strong company in the, maintenance, repair, and overhaul business like we had for helicopter operators, fixed wing operators, maybe you got an 8x multiple of EBITDA if you were strong. If a PE gobbled you up, it was probably only 6x. We got so much more. We found a strategic buyer. We were creating value this way. We had this believable story. We got there quickly, and a very believable story about growing. They could leverage their network to grow even faster. So it was a great deal for Textron. It was a great deal for us. And the transition was super important to me to make sure it went well. It's going great. And I had already turned the page to start running my consulting, investing, leadership development company called Execute to Win, or ETW, which you can find at etw.com. And I wrote a book, Brandon, titled Your Most Important Number. And it outlines the mind management system, most important number in drivers, how I built Able Aerospace, and then took this to hundreds of other companies. When I showed it to Jack Welch, he actually became my business partner in 2011. I met him in 2008. The CEO from General Electric, he said, this is the best business management system I've ever seen. If he had it at GE, the results would have been exponentially better. So I'm so passionate about this value creation journey. And part of the transition, you didn't ask the question this way, but I get it a lot, is, well, what does it feel like? You've moved on. Do you wish you were there? CEOs talk about their identity being in the thing that they were doing. Well, my purpose in life is driving holistic value creation behaviors into the world. And I just keep doing that moving forward. And rather than impacting 500 team members and all the customers we work with there, now it's hundreds of thousands of team members in a number of different organizations. It's like, oh my gosh, this just keeps getting better.
There's a masterclass just in that, about not tying your personal value and purpose to the role you're in, but the outcome you get for yourself, your company, for others. We won't touch that on this episode, but Lee, this is a great conversation. Finally, a good conversation on value creation. I really appreciate you coming. I know you dropped the website, etw.com. So I tossed it on the screen. It's in the show notes down below, along with other ways to connect with Lee. So definitely go do that. Lee, I really appreciate you being here. And I hope you keep doing this work, because you're doing an amazing job.
Thank you, Brandon. And you as well. I appreciate the work that you're doing out there.
Thank you. It would be for nothing if we didn't have listeners and subscribers. So thank you for being here. I hope you really enjoyed this conversation. It's a different look on how you look at your business and your people. And it's a real life story about how if you put the people first, you really care. And don't forget those other two buckets, the emotional and the spiritual connection. That is the stuff that's going to drive your business forward. So go back and listen to this episode. Go check out Lee and what he's up to. And we'll see you tomorrow on another episode of Harmonious at Lunch.
Another episode of Harmonious at Lunch in the books. I hope this episode made you think and you grabbed some actionable ideas to propel your business. Don't forget to like, comment your takeaways, and subscribe wherever you're listening so we can help more entrepreneurs just like you achieve harmony in their life and business. For cutting-edge tools